AirBNB was born probably like all the ideas here on stage, a lot of the ideas here in the audience of just solving a problem for yourself. And it was 10 years ago, actually, that my roommate and I quit our jobs to be entrepreneurs. We had no idea what we wanted to work on.
10 years ago, that's mind-boggling.
It is mind-boggling, think about it. We just knew we wanted to work on a big idea. We had no idea what it would be. And so all this optimism and enthusiasm quickly went away when I get a letter from the landlord. It says, "Dear Joe, your rent is going up 25%. And the fear of God set in. We ran to our online bank accounts. We had a math problem. The rent went like this, our bank accounts went like this, and we said, oh, what are we gonna do?
Yeah.
So we had to scramble. We had to think of a way to solve this problem.
How many roommates at the time?
It was my roommate Brian,
Yeah, Brian.
our CEO. And so it turned out that I'm on my laptop in the living room one day, and there's a design conference coming to San Francisco, and it says all the hotels are sold out on the conference website. And I look up over the top of the laptop screen, and I see all this empty space in our living room. And I think to myself, I have this airbed in the closet. What if we inflated it on the floor, hosted guests for the design conference, they could have a place to stay last minute, and we could help make ends meet through making a rent check. So I emailed Brian, he's like, I love it. We actually go to the store, we get 2 more airbeds. So we got this palatial setup of 3 airbeds in our living room. We make a website called Airbed and Breakfast. And we advertise pictures of ourselves, pictures of the 3 airbeds. We would cook breakfast for our guests in the morning, pick them up from the airport. We'd make t-shirts for them, give them a map to San Francisco. It was a whole package of really thinking, how do we design a whole experience for people, even from the very beginning? So we did this for one weekend. We hosted 3 guests. We made over $1,000, which saved our apartment, which is incredible.
Right.
But really the magic was in meeting them. It was this idea of sharing our city with these 3 people who arrived as strangers and left as friends. And we didn't actually think that this was the idea. So the weekend happened, and the gears began to turn, but very slowly. So it wasn't until about 3 months later that Brian and I said, well, we haven't come up with anything else yet. What about that thing where we hosted those people on those airbeds? We're kind of like 2 normal guys. We're willing to bet there's enough other people in the world who would want to share their homes with others as well. So we're just designers. We knew we needed an engineer to bring on the team. My previous roommate, Nate, we called him up. He loved the idea, and we had our founding team.
Wow.
So
that's wild. Let's have a hand for that for starting.
I wish I could say that everything else was just
Smooth.
took off from there. It couldn't be further from the truth. And when people look at the company and they say, oh my God, an overnight success, I cringe, because if any entrepreneur looks at our company and thinks that, you know, we just built it and they came, it couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
And
So tell us the next iteration then. I mean, you had
the
some
next
rough
one we
times.
launched for South by Southwest in 2008, because that was where you went to launch your tech company. Foursquare and Twitter and all the others had these glory days of launching and just taking off like rockets. So we launched at South by Southwest 10 years ago, 2008, and we have all of this enthusiasm. We have this new shiny product, the second version, and we have a total of 5 hosts sign up and 2 reservations. And one of those was us.
No.
This was a miserable failure by every metric that you could think of. We barely got even 1 mention on 1 blog. And so now it's back to the drawing table again. And we end up launching a 3rd time later that summer for the Democratic National Convention.
Yes.
Now, if you remember 10 years ago, Barack Obama, John McCain, this is taking over every headline you can imagine around the world. And we thought, interesting, in Denver, there's a housing crisis. There's 100,000 people going to see President-elect Obama speak, and there's 20,000 hotel rooms. Maybe we can ride the coattails of this press and actually get some awareness for this marketplace. So we did exactly that, and we got coverage from here to Paris. It was incredible. Everybody wanted to tell the story about how the residents of Denver were opening up their homes to take in Obama supporters to solve this housing problem. And so we literally went from nothing to like a weekend sensation. We had a few hundred people actually using our service. So our PayPal account went from 0 to $30,000 overnight, and it set off every fraud filter inside PayPal, and they shut it down. which was really scary because we had to pay our hosts, but we couldn't access the money. And so hosts are getting really upset at us, like, where's my money? So it's like a little precarious situation. Now, there's a graph of when you start a company that I feel like everybody's probably gone through on stage, and if you started a company in the audience. It's called the process, is the name of the graph. And sort of you're in the building phase, there's no traffic, there's no growth. Then you have the launch of initiation. And suddenly you go from zero awareness to some kind of, hopefully really exciting awareness, and your numbers are going up and you're like, it's happening, we built it and they came. However, there's a phase called the wearing off of novelty, where people look for the next exciting product or company to talk about. And then you enter this phase that's romantically called the trough of sorrow. I think of this phase as where you have a product and a market, almost like two gears that don't quite fit yet. And so there's no forward momentum in your business. And so the trough can last for weeks or months or sometimes years. So after
Some people never get out of it.
Some people go, yeah. So after the Democratic National Convention, we're in this trough, and it is dismal. We're making $200 a week to cover 3 guys living in San Francisco. That doesn't work. It's at this point where our numbers were up, we're like, let's go talk to investors. Seems like a good idea. The numbers are up and to the right. They like those kinds of graphs, don't they? So we get introduced to 20 of the top tier investors.
Can I interject before you do that? Will you tell people how you funded up until that point?
Well, we, basically dwindled our savings accounts. Our parents were nice enough to help us out, for a month. And then it was really up to us to figure out the rest. And we thought we'd get investment because the numbers were up. Every investor we talked to, like you've heard from others today, they all said no. It was crazy. These are the people who picked the PayPals, they picked the YouTubes, they picked the Facebooks, staring at our business model saying, wait a second, your business model is based on people publicly sharing pictures of their most intimate spaces, their bedrooms, their bathrooms, the places you normally keep closed when people come over. And you're gonna publicly post pictures of those on the internet, and then entire strangers are gonna come sleep in their homes? This is gonna be huge. So people gave us this look, and no one could get over this stranger danger bias that we've all been taught since we were kids. And so every investor said no. It was the worst feeling in the world, where you're so excited about something and incredible people are rejecting you. It was a moment where I really learned, I think, a fundamental of entrepreneurship that applies to anybody, anywhere, is that you have this incredible capacity to reframe things. And so for us, we reframed each of those no's as an invitation to keep going.
Yeah.
And you can accept it or not.
Yes.
And so each of those, okay, they said no, let's keep going. Thanks for the invitation, we accept. So without any revenue coming in, without any, our bank accounts are getting this small, we start to take out credit cards. This was a great idea. So we take those binders where you keep baseball cards, and we start to use those for all of our different, and we joke that we did raise a round of funding. We called it the Visa round. It's the only things that Visa didn't know about it.
Oh, you also made another product. I have a box of it.
We do. So this is where our story takes a bit of a sideways trek. So come with me on this journey, where it's now September of 2008. We're just in the pits of the trough of sorrow. Our co-founder Nate moves back to Boston to be with his girlfriend, so the band's kind of coming apart. And Brian and I, late one night, we're in the kitchen, it's 2 a.m., just trying to keep our spirits up. And we joke, because at the time, anything with Obama's face on it or McCain's face on it was selling like a hotcake. And we thought, well, we're AirBNB breakfast. What if we provided breakfast to our guests? That could be cool. What if we made breakfast cereal? What if it was politically themed? We could put Obama, that'd be Obama O's. The breakfast of change. And we could have something for McCain. Well, he was an officer in the Navy. Well, obviously that's Captain McCain's. A maverick in every bite. And so, strangely enough, these harebrained concepts somehow became breakfast cereal. We just pieced this all together with zero budget. We actually had negative budget because we're now $10,000 plus in credit card debt. So with a zero budget, we figured out how to make a breakfast cereal. We found a printer to make the boxes on commission. We found a photographer to donate some time, an illustrator to help here. I pieced it all together, designed these boxes. And we numbered each one on the top out of 500. We decided this is a collector's item now. We can sell these for $40 a box. And we send it out to all the media. It ends up getting on CNN. We did a live video with CNN from our living room, became the political video of the day on CNN.com, and we sold out of Obama O's. And every time an order would come in, because we had no money, we would take that money, I'd run to the grocery store in my Jeep, I'd go to the cereal aisle with like 3 shopping carts, I'd clear the O's off the shelf, and the first time I'm in line with like 3 shopping carts of O's, the cashier looks at me and she goes, "What's this?" And I'm like, "Oh, we're AirBNB Breakfast. We're this tech startup here in San Francisco." And she was so confused. I just looked at her and I go, "We run a bed and breakfast." And she goes, "Oh, okay." So we'd literally take an order. We'd come back to the kitchen. Our kitchen was like ground zero for like cereal production. We'd take it out of the box of one and we put it in our own custom design box, hot glue the top, ship it out that night. I mean,
There's quite a margin on a $40 box of cereal.
$40 a box, 500 boxes of Obama-O's, we made $20,000 in breakfast cereal, which is how we funded AirBNB.
Give a hand, ladies You were nice enough to send me one of those numbered boxes of each. I personally possess them.
That's right.
Awesome.
Side note, the Cat McCain's didn't quite sell so well.
Yes.
So we ended up offering a promotion to try to move those, but for months after that, we had these piles of Cat McCain's in our kitchen. And it became our fortitude every morning, because we still had no money. All the money we made just basically paid off the credit cards, so we're back to zero. Awesome. And so we just started eating Cat McCain's for the next couple months. And then we picked these high fiber squares, which was like the worst idea.
Joe, your biggest obstacle was this stranger danger component. And you're a designer, and this is the part of the genius of AirBNB and your genius personally. Tell us how you designed getting around that real fear that people have. It's the main reason why these VCs wouldn't give you any money.
Of course. Well, I feel like anytime you face a problem, you fall back on what you know, and all we really knew was design. Brian and I studied at a design school, and you learn in design school that design is not just about the look and feel of something. It's actually about the whole experience. And so for us, the question was, we've done that for objects before. We know how to do that for an object, but can we do that for a whole experience? Can you design this Olympic-sized trust that needs to be created for 2 people to feel comfortable coming together in a home? And it was a question. We didn't know if we could answer it or not, that can you design for trust? So we took everything that we knew and we poured it into creating a fun and friendly web experience where people feel like they could trust the service. We used copy and tone and colors and typography and every design element that would engender a sense of trust with somebody. We made sure that every edge was clean, that there were nothing was janky or misaligned, that people could trust the service that we were delivering to them. We also learned about this, we'll call it the disclosure principle, which was how much somebody shares about themselves had a lot to do with how comfortable somebody was to let them in their home. And so if somebody messaged a host and said simply, "Yo," the acceptance rate was pretty low. If somebody messaged a host with like a novella about their mother and everything that's going on in their life that was like 4 paragraphs long, the decline rate also dropped. But we discovered there's this sweet spot right in the middle, which is, "Hey, I'm coming for vacation with my family. I love the art on your wall." So there's this art of disclosure that we could actually help prompt people to disclose the right amount at the right time to help build trust.
Yes. And that process, how long did it take before that trust level became more of a standard? And maybe share a little bit about how did you really break through? Because how long into it were you still not making money?
Too long.
Yes.
I'd say, the first 3 years were incredibly painful. We did raise some venture funding along the way. But the business did not take off for like really 3-ish years. It was really painful, and it really made a discredit to think that Airbnb just like took off like a rocket overnight. It took an incredible amount of persistence. It took an incredible amount of just this reframing. Every rejection, every no, every adversity we had, we flipped it into an opportunity.
Yes. You were encouraged, if I remember correctly, by kind of a mentor to get in front of your customers,
Yes.
to get in front of the hosts
Oh
in
my
New
God.
York. Tell me a little bit about that, because you were only doing a couple $100 a week, and then you went to make those trips to New York. Let's talk about that.
So by all means that you would evaluate the success of a business, put it through a spreadsheet, look at the market size, look at our market share, revenue. The equation at the bottom would have said, shut this business down because it's not going anywhere.
Right.
Literally. So it took a belief that went beyond just normal logic for us to power through this. And one of those things that helped us was Paul Graham, sort of startup guru in Silicon Valley, gave us this piece of advice. He said, go meet your people. His top line advice is to make something people want. It's literally on the t-shirt that he gives the people that he works with. And so what's the fastest way to understand what people want? A conversation.
Yeah.
Go talk to
People
them.
forget that.
But there's this funny thing that happens when you're coding something, is that you tend to want to solve things through code because that's what's scalable, right? Like you want to have a company that can scale. The problem was we were way ahead of ourselves. We had anything to scale. We actually needed to get away from our computers, away from our offices, and go out into the world and go talk to our customers face to face. You will get more from a conversation than you ever will from a survey.
Yes.
You will get so much more depth of what's actually going on in somebody's life, in their mind, the issues they have with your service, that we flew to New York, which was kind of crazy at the time, to meet our early adopters, of which...
And your business was what size then? You guys were
I mean, we had 30 hosts in New York.
and you were generating how much revenue?
$200 a week.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
this
what I
was,
thought.
this is not going anywhere.
And this is 3 years in, almost?
This is about a year plus in.
Year plus enough.
So we're in New York, Brian and I flew out, and we realized there was a problem, that people didn't quite know how to take a good photo of their apartment. And we said, you know, I've done photography in my life, I took classes at RISD, and I said, why don't we just go solve this problem? So we fly to New York, we rent this camera, and we go take photos of our host's apartment for free. And they loved it. And so here we are in their homes taking pictures, showing the picture on the back of the camera, and they go, oh my God, this is amazing, my apartment looks so great. Do you want to stay for some tea? Oh, interesting. Okay, sure. So we're sitting on the couch, and suddenly, instinctively, you go into this sort of research mode where you start asking questions. How's it going using our service? And people would take their laptops out, and they'd actually show us all of the issues they were having trying to manage their Airbnb account. Hosts would tell us, I'm having this problem with your calendar, your payment system's messed up here, I can't really evaluate a review. These are all things we never knew existed until we went out into the world, got out of our comfort zone, went into their comfort zone to see what was really on their mind. And it was through these conversations where we started to demystify that gap between our product and market fit. That invisible space that was holding us back began to close. We would take their feedback and iterate on our product and incorporate these really passionate customers. Remember, like the people who signed up for your company, you know, the first 30 customers, first 100 customers, first 1,000 customers are going to be some of the most passionate, you know, risk-taking enthusiasts, the zealots of whatever it is you're offering. They have a lot to say if they're really into it. And so these hosts poured out all this information, which demystified this gap for us, and the gears started to turn. We posted the photos, we implemented the feedback. The next week, revenue went from $200, which had been out for about 8 months, and it jumped to $400. I had to ask Nate, is there a bug in the system? Because this is not normal. There wasn't though, it was people actually starting to use the service more.
Because of the pictures, they were more compelling.
Because people could see
and they also
paying.
had more relationship with you, they were more vested
Absolutely,
as well.
it was building trust.
Yeah.
With our hosts one-on-one and with our guests, they could actually see what they were paying for, and they felt comfortable looking through our system.
Yeah.
Versus other classified websites and tall, small, fuzzy photos. One of the cool side stories, I don't know if you know this, but one of our trips to New York, I actually met a guy who was working on a startup out of his apartment, and he was also a host on Airbnb. His name was Andrew Cordina.
Wow, that's
way.
My mic on?
no, please, you're on.
Yeah.
Hello. Oh yeah. Yeah. I was coming up to stay with him. That he's like, you
He
came in.
charged you to stay at his place?
Well, no. So you've been in the long.
Yes.
The long.
I was in that apartment.
With the little.
I took pictures of that
Yeah, no,
apartment.
he told me that you were coming. What? Now, how about that for a connected world?
Wow, that's wild. Did you pay for it with Venmo?
I was going to say, if PayPal's giving you problems, I know some people at Venmo.
Could use that 8 years ago, 9 years
So
ago.
we jumped to 400, it doubled, just
Up to
by
400.
insulation.
So we go back the next weekend, we shoot more apartments, meet more hosts, get more feedback, iterate more on our product, and the next week the numbers go from $400 to $800. So we did the same thing, it was a recipe, and we repeated it every weekend for 6 weeks, and revenue doubled. And by the end of 6 weeks, we were making over $4,000 a week. And one of the ways that we got to this is a little known thing behind the scenes that we did that I have to give credit to, is we came up with a deadline for ourselves of when we needed to make $1,000 a week, basically to pay rent. And there's a term for this, it's called ramen profitability. Which is, you're making enough to pay rent and enough to buy ramen. Which for us was a huge deal at the time. Like, we'd be lucky that would have been amazing. That was like a luxury for us. So our goal was $1,000 a week, $4,000 a month, we could pay our rent check. And so we had a deadline of when to hit the spot, and we did this something a little bit crazy. We made up a graph from the future. We made up a graph of our revenue that didn't exist yet between where we were to where our deadline was, that literally showed our revenue climbing week over week of how we wanted to happen. We printed this graph out about 8 or 9 or 10 times, and we taped it up all around our apartment. It was in the bathroom mirror, you're brushing your teeth at night, staring at the graph. You open the fridge, it's next to the milk. You're on the computer, it's like next to your computer screen.
It's awesome.
This was everywhere. We became militant about hitting this.
It's like what everybody's talking about here, your own psychology, starting with that, right?
We just had such a crystal clear goal. And so it's just like, we're gonna do whatever it takes to get there. It means flying across the country, doing things that don't scale. You can't do that through code, go and have a conversation with somebody. But it was getting out of our comfort zones, doing things that don't scale, that finally got the business on an upward trajectory. And it's from those moments that we've never looked back.
Wow. And what stage did you know this was the business? I mean, you know, that you had arrived, so to speak. When I say arrived, meaning the foundation of this business was going to scale worldwide.
It was a couple years. I think, gosh.
A couple years after that?
It was probably a year, 2 years after that. You know, we were able to raise a round of financing. We started to hire a team. You know, you make a decision as an entrepreneur. There's a couple ways to run a business, all of which are equally great. One is you have a lifestyle business that helps cover your lifestyle. The other is you choose to have a business that maybe you want to scale it and have a great acquisition and an exit. And there's another path where maybe you want to really go for another impossible, which would be to create like an independent brand that maybe take public one day if you're lucky. And so for us, when we took our money from VCs, you need to have a sense of kind of which direction you're going.
Yeah.
Right? You can't take VC money and run a lifestyle business really. So it's kind of like, okay, do we want to build something and create a lot of value for a bigger company, or do we want to actually try and attempt at maybe possibly creating an independent brand that could, you know, potentially be generational, like the greats that we really admire, which is of course, you know, a shot at the moon. And we decided that we wanted to go for that.
Yes.
That we saw the travel industry hadn't really changed since the 90s when, you know, travel moved online, and it really become this race to just kind of turning travel into fast food. It was about efficiency and kind of like fast calories, right? Like,
yeah.
You kind of
and
lost
commoditizing it.
Commoditizing it. It was a race to the bottom of just comparing prices of a commoditized room against some other website. We thought we have a really fresh take of bringing the charm of travel back.
Yeah.
That people, when
The
you travel,
relationships.
people very rarely have I heard somebody come back and tell me how great you know, a traditional accommodation room was, versus people come home and they tell stories about the people they met. They tell you stories about the time they got lost and they wandered down this other street or this alley they weren't expecting, and they discovered this incredible, whatever, ramen shop, whatever the thing might be. Somebody just told me the story recently about getting lost in Tokyo. in a good way. And so we thought that we had a real opportunity to bring back travel in a more authentic way. And we have the size of the industry, it's rather large, and we said, let's just go for it.
Yeah. Tell us today, you have a giant organization, hundreds of millions of people that are utilizing your services. How do you keep the culture alive, and what is the culture today? And then secondly, where are you going?
Sure, well, this is the biggest question. And when we made that decision to aim for long-term independent brand, somebody said, well, you need to get your culture right from the beginning. If that's the case, whatever culture you create from your earliest employees will set the standard and the DNA for what it's like years down the road. And so we became students of culture. And back in 2009, the single company that was known for stewarding an incredible culture was Zappos.
Yeah,
so we hopped on a plane and we went to visit Zappos. And we did a whole tour of Zappos. And I have to admit, from the outside, they were in an office park outside of Las Vegas. I remember getting off the van and thinking, that's Zappos? That looks like the film set from the movie Office Space. Remember Initech? They probably filmed that there. How's that a cool, fun company? However, the minute the doors opened and you went inside, there was this whoosh of energy that you could feel. And the women behind the counter, the front desk, were like, welcome to Zappos, can we get you anything? And from that point on, you were whisked away in this incredible culture. And they had about 800 people at the time. Everywhere you went, the single thing I'll never forget is people were so happy to be there. And Brian, Nate, and I, we came back from that trip. It was contagious. It's like coming up from one of your events, right?
Yes, Zappos is like that for sure.
We were at the airport high-fiving security guards. They're like, what happened to you? Did you win something in the casinos? We go, no, we went to Zappos. What's Zappos? And suddenly we're marketing Zappos. So we get back to San Francisco and we literally sit down and we say, we need to take the best of what we just experienced, mix it into our own ingredients, and make it our own, so that one day, if we're ever lucky to have that many people working for us, they're as happy to be a part of our organization as what we just experienced. And so we did. We wrote down these non-negotiables, because we were about to start hiring our first employee, and we said, we want to get this right. Tony Hsieh saw us on the tour. We got to chatting. He gave us a tip. He said, it's a lot easier to mold concrete when it's still wet than to chip away later when it's dry. So get the hiring right from the very beginning.
Yes.
So here we are writing down our non-negotiables as we're interviewing people. These are the things that we will just not compromise on. These are the things that three of us will agree that we're not gonna cut corners. And so we stuck to that at a time when, by the way, the numbers are starting to tick up. Nate is our one engineer, and the site's starting to expand. And poor guy, he needed 3 or 4 engineers to help him out. And we ended up waiting 3 months to hire somebody because we were so diligent about sticking to our
criteria.
Our list, our criteria.
It's really cool. Tony Hsieh, by the way, you guys have a hand for that for sure. Tony Hsieh is a dear friend, and one of the things that they do at Zappos also, besides screening, that his whole thing is find the right people, not train the right people. Find the right people and then train them. And everyone gets trained in every position in the company. Literally, you have to work in the factory, you have to work and go get shoes, you have to do everything, you have to work in customer service. But my favorite thing is, he then offers people, and I forgot the amount, I think it's $3,500 or $5,000, to walk away after all the training's done. It usually takes, I think it's usually 2 months or 3 months salary. And the reason he does that is because if that person is willing to be wooed away, it's that decision point, making them decide, do I just want the money, I can not work for 3 months? Or do I really want to be part of this culture? And when people make that decision, it's different. And if they take the money, he's always thrilled because those are the same people who will be leaving anyway, right? So it's a huge piece. Where is Airbnb going now? I know you're moving, into an element of where you're including so much of what travel really means. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, to give you a snapshot, I'll enter that through the culture topic. The real compliment that we got through all of what we built is, it was a couple of years ago, we got a phone call of a company that wanted to come visit us to learn about our culture.
Cool.
It was Zappos.
That's good. That's awesome.
That was the highest compliment I think we could have gotten. So I like to believe that we still have a place that 10 years in and a few thousand employees is still exciting, it's exuberant, it's energetic, it's full of creativity. And you know, when I talk to candidates, I ask them, you know, I usually this question 3 adjectives to describe their experience so far, and I can't tell you how many people use the word energy, or it's like you can feel buzz in the air.
Yes.
So, big question for me is how do we keep that with scale? Because any big company will tell you that's like the hardest thing to do. Is like how do you keep the soul? How do you keep that spark of when you're just a couple people in a living room or you know in an apartment or working out at a cafe? How do you do that at scale? Although the law of large numbers is working against you. So we do everything we possibly can to help keep that intimacy of the early days. So where are we going?
How are some ways you do that before you tell us where you're going? What are some specific things you do in an organization that large to keep that alive?
One of the things that we came up with, so for a while, Brian, Nate, and I interviewed everybody, and I think the recruiting team wanted to have our heads because we were slowing down the process. It was just not working, obviously. So we were like, well, we need to come up with a new way to do this. So we created what we call the core values interviewers. And we actually started training people in the company to interview the same way that we would. And they're a group of people who are part of the interview process that don't have a stake in the game. They don't care if the person gets hired or not for the role. Like a hiring manager really cares, like I need this person yesterday, so I'm gonna make sure that we can hire them. So it's more of like an independent body to screen for, is it a culture values or a core values fit?
That's
like
great.
Said about
That's
Tony
brilliant,
Shea.
yeah. Brilliant.
So that's one thing that we do to
Cool,
see how
that's helpful. Where are you going?
Well, we have this dream that one day you can use Airbnb to book magical trips and experiences all over the world. And we started with one thing. We've imbued our values of community-centric, great design, and global scale into the accommodations. As everybody knows, it's just one of many decisions that you make to put a great trip together. And so for us, our big dream is how do we reinvent the trip? How do we help piece together authentic local experiences from the time you start dreaming about where to go all the way through how you get there, to where you stay, to what you do, to where you eat, to who you meet, to what you learn and experience, and what you share when you come back.
It's beautiful. It's going beyond a trip, really, to the journey. You know, you go on a trip, it's predictable. You go on a journey, you don't know what's going to come next. It's part of what keeps you engaged, and I think that's a huge part of what Airbnb does. You take people on a journey. You really have, and you've been on one hell of a journey already, and still a young man. Pretty damn exciting. Can we have a hand here for Gebbia?